Hey, this is Todd Henry. I just wanted to take a moment to share with you a couple of different thoughts about optimizing your iOS device before you start to use it for some serious content management. Now, keep in mind as I'm sharing these tips with you, I am not a big, I'm a former Apple employee. I'm not a big fan of iOS. There, I said it. Um, quite frankly, I prefer my Samsung Note 3 and Android as an operating system because of a couple of basic features. But for some reason, I find myself oddly attached to this little device. I use an iPod Touch to simulate an iPhone experience. I'm not willing to pay for an iPhone, per se, but the functionality and the form factor is pretty much the same. So I'm using an iPod as an iPhone in this particular scenario in order to share these tips. First and foremost, when you swipe up from the bottom, there are a lot of different controls that you can access, like flight mode and Bluetooth and so forth. The less that you have to have on, obviously, the better. In this particular scenario, I'm using Wi-Fi because that's the only way to connect to the screencast. But simply by swiping up or down, I can get access to all of that. A couple of different a word about settings. I like to have almost all of my notifications turned off. I don't like a bunch of numbers and you know things telling me how behind I am, and so I don't use it all the time. I tend to hide most of my notifications. When it comes to privacy, last week Steve Dotto did a great thing about location services and what you want to turn off or on, and in particular the system services settings of diagnostics and usage and location-based iAds and shutting those off. One of my favorite little shortcuts is this. I'm not really a big fan of the way that apps tend to install in a random order. I like my applications to be in alphabetical order so that they're easier to find. And so one of my favorite things is to go into, as soon as I install an app, I go in and I reset the home screen layout so that everything is in alphabetical order. Now, some people don't like that because what that means is that if they have any folders that they've or changes that they've made to the defaults, that those are going to disappear. But I would much rather, for me, it's much easier to find an application when it's in alphabetical order. Or I also like being able to pull down and use Spotlight in order to just go directly to an application or to a person. So I find that using Spotlight in combination, with typing is much better. One of the things that I don't like about, the whole iOS experience is that there are no keyboard replacements that are available. And let's see, I'm looking for, okay, this has got to be under General and Settings. Let's see, keyboard. To be able to use shortcuts throughout application. That is actually pretty handy, and I do like that. But for the most part, I don't like the fact that Apple doesn't let me do a keyboard replacement like I can in Android and use a tool like Swipe. Also, tend to find that voice recognition in Android is a little bit more effective because it shows you word by word rather than by clicking on the word done. But other than that, it's okay. So just a couple of thoughts on optimizing the iOS experience.